one of these days, when I got a bit more time, I'm going to tidy this place up. And I'll tell you something, it won't look nearly as nice as it does now. Well, many of you have been wandering with me across the southeast, Kent and Sussex, for 10 years now, I suppose. And for me, it's been a wandering place. Here they call it Dougalling, because it's the brain, you know, when you get to my age, that sort of flits like a butterfly from one subject to another. I mean, for some silly reason, I'm telling you now that Rudolf Diesel, the man who developed the diesel engine and diesel fuel, and whose name, sadly, now is just spelt with a small d, well, he vanished suddenly on a cross-channel ferry driven by steam. Steam, you know, there's a thought. You think back to about the turn of the century, when steam was the prime mover, the important thing in industry, in agriculture. Everything worked off steam. And old boys like this, at their thrashing engines, they worked so hard, they loved those old engines. Well, two of those men who began working together way back in 1918 as driver and mate are still going strong, still working, mates together with the same old engines, lovingly renovated and maintained in the workshops of a firm that deals normally with the most up-to-date haulage and agricultural machinery. Two grand old men of steam. At the wheel, Joe Bull, 79 years old, and his one-time boss and friend, Dick Birch, 84. They started working together in their teens and have been together ever since. Well, there's something about Birch's old yard at Sellinge that gives you the feeling that for generations, Birches have been saying, don't throw that away. It might come in useful sometime. So there are old thrashers, hullers, machines, paraffin engines, steam engines. They're all here, a kind of glorious mausoleum. Dick and Joe, you know, you've been together for, is it?
63 years.
63 years. I mean, it's like a kind of steam wedding or something, isn't it?
Possibly, yes.
How did it all start? I mean, as far as you two are concerned, you're great friends, and you were master and man, really, weren't you?
Exactly. I wasn't very old, you know. When he started with me, he came, we were threshing, and he came fetching water to the engine. And it's gone on from there, step by step, that he finished off. He had a tackle as well as me.
A lot of people think of the old farmers, you know, in the 20s and 30s as being very kindly old gentlemen with rosy cheeks, rushing out with flagons of cider into the thrashing yard and that, and slipping you £5 notes. Were they like this?
Very few, very few.
Because my feeling is they were as tight as the ticks on a dog's neck, weren't they?
That's right, yes. The only way you had to go, you used to get, so as you knew your customers, and treat them as you'd like to be treated yourself, more or less, but you knew which way to treat them. The tight ones, the tightest of all, keep upside them. Get as many hours against them as you could. That just to keep the balance the books a bit, like, you know.
I suppose when these steam horses began to hit the roads in large numbers, the four-legged type of horse was not too pleased about it. You must have had some strange encounters.
Well, you did, because, see, they made it a rule that we should, your mate on the engine, this horse was frightened, he was supposed to get down and walk along and offer to lead it by. But you see, some people used to get a little like that, they didn't want him to lead it by. Then you used to have some fun at times, you know, the horse run backwards and forwards, and you was trying to get along, wanted to get along.
What about at night?
Yeah, at night time was the worst, because you saw two lights coming towards you, You didn't know whether it was another mate of yours coming with the engine or whether it was a horse and trap until you got a little closer, and then you saw they was these little candle lights. One experience I remember very well, I was about along with Mr. Birch, you know. We turned New Barn Corner going towards Itchin Hill. Saw these two lights coming toward us, and all of a sudden there was such a crack and a bang, and I said to him, I said, "Horse and trolley going over the edge there." Of course, he stops, and we could hear this old man rush out in the field, you know, and swearing at the horse. And next thing we stood there and waited for him, and he went round and he opened the gate there side of the New Barn and went straight along into the limits. He was still swearing when he went by.
Tell me about the thrashing team, because thrashing was 100% teamwork, wasn't it? I mean, what sort of fellas were they and how did they work?
Well, when I first started driving full-time, I had about 6 or 7, and they laid rough on the farm, you know. See, they all had their bedrooms at these different farms. The farm used to fix them up with a bit of straw and all that. But then they'd go right out in an old hole somewhere and light a fire, you know, make their tea and all that. But they chaps was good chaps. But if you got a bad one, they'd very soon come to you. If you don't get rid of him, we're going. And that's the way you could only keep a good team, by getting rid of a bad one. But they used to get round that old fire, old Charlie Ralph and all of them, you know. And the sayings they used to have. It was all round the fire one morning I went up there, and old Charlie went to get something. His mate took his kittle off. He said, "I took your kittle off, Charlie, it was boiling." He said, "How the bloody hell do you know what I wanted it?" And if they had bloaters, it was fatal. The full fishermen used to walk round with a basket. If they come with bloaters, they'd go out and buy 6 pennyworth, and they'd roll them up in newspaper and lay them on the old engine. And the old stuff used to run right down there in the smoke box here, you know. But there was always 2 on a safety valve. They was mine. That old grease used to run down there, and they used to cook them in that newspaper and eat them.
As you can see, the mud coming out of there now. Really coming
There are
out.
4 generations of Birches today in the business. There's Dick's son, Les, who's managing director. He has 2 sons in the business, young David and Richard. There's even a little grandson there who's right into it with a spanner. Steam is only a hobby now. The real Birch business is in modern powered machinery. But the characters here love steam, and so does Les Birch himself, even more than his dad.
Les, I see you believe that old men like young women should be kept hard at it, at work, I mean.
Well, yes, Donald, I quite firmly believe in this, because there's no doubt about it, with Dad and Joe, a couple of old boys around the company like we've got, there doesn't seem to be anything too much trouble for them. They're the best of friends. I mean, they started as, Joe started, as you appreciate, working for my dad and granddad. He's been a very loyal worker. I cannot honestly say I can't remember him ever being late in the morning. He liked his beer, he worked hard, he earned his money, and he spent it as he wished. No one ever tried to infringe on his rights or tell him where he got to go and what he got to do. And that was one of the mottos Joe said was well for the company and for the firm he was working for. And there's no doubt about it, having been here, you know, bred and born here, with Dad and Joe and several more engine drivers and their mates, it growed into my blood. Nothing for what I couldn't sort of find and even drive a traction engine when I was around about 7 or 8 years of age.
It's the same feeling for Les's own sons, David and Richard.
Well, we've got grandfather Dick, you know, moving about the business still, very active. What's his sort of unspoken message to you?
He's really an old gentleman, isn't he? You know, I mean, he's been very good to us. He's taught us everything we know.
He's kind.
That's right.
I mean, he's brought us up. Anything that we want, if we work for and help him, he will give us. And that's just basically his attitude to life.
And I remember you telling me you got some other advice from an old man, didn't you?
Yes, he was a very, very old gentleman, and he come from Kent, and he said to me, steam engines have got a soul. They're not quite like a car. When they go wrong, they actually tell you that they're going to go wrong. They're not quite like a car, just break down. they seem to start to blow steam out and give you a very, very long warning. And that's what steam engines are all about.
Both of you, what do you miss most about steam?
The smell of it.
Well, I suppose so.
It's one of the
I'm
things.
quite used to it, and it took a little while to get turned over. But now we've had diesel tractors, I wouldn't go back.
You wouldn't go back to steam?
No. Would you?
Well, I don't know.
He's a bit of a steam fanatic, but I don't think I would. I spent a lot of time in this last war when I had to stir my own fire up in the morning, and I think I nearly lived with it. And when I got off it, I said I'd had enough. And then I bought my diesel tractor.
Well, I looked at you both today and I thought you haven't lost your touch, either of you, on those old wheels and levers. You never forget it, I suppose, do you?
You only want to be on it in about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour to get used to its ways. Train one engine works alike.
Memories coming out there like blasts of steam. Joe Bull, you know, today I should think is like a senior vice president of steam. He's the fellow that all the young amateur or beginner steam students come to for advice and consultation, and good advice they get. Well, every year since he was about 70, Joe has been getting birthday cards, modest little things like this, you know. Aren't those beautiful? And those are really treasured by Joe, and rightly so. Opens out, you see, gets one of them every year. And look at this one. Have a look at that. The old stove there. I don't know whether I can get it open, see what's cooking. A hedgehog. Well, I suppose Joe, in his day, might have cooked a hedgehog, but there may be some secret significance there anyway. But these lovely cards come to him every year and show how people respect him. Well, we went back to the workshops for the great event on the steam calendar when engines and owners come from miles around to the field behind the Birch workshops for the great Sellinge steam special. And we saw those old engines sleeping there suddenly come to life and come lumbering out into the yard.
What is it about this spirit of steam now that men don't have to actually work with it? It turns men into boys again and youths into smoky, oily veterans. I think it's respect for steam and all that it did to build a once successful agricultural Britain. Engine owners come to these almost pagan festivals from miles around, polishing, wiping, coaxing, cursing, spitting, persuading, and keeping the old flywheel spinning. This is the life for a single steaming, heavenly, grubby day. And I can tell you it is a grubby day here today because there was very heavy rainfall the night before. These old steamers, well, they're grand, they're good, but they don't take to this sort of thing. They don't like mud because those wheels get spinning, as Joe Bull would tell you, and it's greasy, it's nasty. It means all hands to the pump because even Dick's lends a hand, but modern equipment, I'm sorry to say, like this or a bit bigger, has got to get to work to pull those old steamers out of the muck. But there they go, grand, polished, smoking, talking to each other almost, as they go onto the showground, twiddling, turning. Needs a lot of concentration, this. really a lot of, I don't know, a lot of courage, I think, because the weather was against it. Les Birch says it's just about the worst Sellinge steam special for weather that he's known since they started. Tough going, but they made it in the end, and now it's all the fun of the fair. And there was a fair, because always the old steam special has with it the fairground and the music. You see, all this really is part of steam, the mortier organs and the guilt and the joy and the grandeur. And here we're getting ready. They line up there, the old thoroughbreds, steaming and snarling and whispering to each other, complaining, smouldering, coughing, ready for the great race to see not who's the fastest, but who's the slowest. They're off, and this is what it's all about. The great line of steamers. It's the last one who wins, but he's got to keep the wheels turning, he's got to keep the flywheel running, and he's got to keep the slowest pace. It isn't the first over the line, it's actually the last over the line, and there's a lot of skill in doing this, and the people who drive these engines are pretty well on the ball. They know exactly what it's all about. Well, there she is. There's the winner. That engine there, coming over the line last, and obviously they have just got it. I thought they would. There was something about the look of those two drivers there that made me think they've done it all before. Time now to start another great trial of strength. Something really quite different. Here we are, 7 horsepower of steam, the boys and girls on the rope. I don't know how authentic this is, but it's a bit of give and a bit of take. A bit of encouragement is needed now and again, a bit of the old carrot and that stick. I knew my stick had come in useful. Hold together, go! Well, those old evening shadows beginning to fall now at the end of a long, very hard day. And for Dick and I, it's a glass of beer at the beer tent.
I tell you what, I got really quite hungry when I was listening to Joe Bull talking about those bloaters, frying them up on the old engine, you know. Well, there's a couple of bloaters. You don't see them very much these days. And certainly a man who can tell us all about bloaters is John Griggs from Hyde. John, how long has your family been in this fish catching and curing business?
Well, our family's been in the fishing industry for about 150 years. Goes back about 7 generations altogether. And we've been curing herrings for something like 50 years, 51 years.
Well, tell me something. How does a bloater get this surprised look on its face? You know, because it starts off, I suppose, as an ordinary herring, doesn't it?
Yes, it starts off as a herring. There, for instance, you've got a herring, you see. and it's put on the stick like that. Its head has to be open. This is known as a spit. Its head has to be opened, and it comes out as a finished article as a bloater, like that.
How many of these did you put on a stick in the old days?
Well, we always put 20 herrings on a stick, because that was 1/6 of 100. There's 6 spits to 100. And in the old days, in about the 1920s, they were sold for something like 3 shillings a long 100.
What's a long 100?
A long 100 is 132 herrings and 120 bloaters.
This is something like a baker's dozen, but in the fish trade.
Yes,
Yeah.
I suppose so, really.
But what was the idea of that, the 132?
Well, the 132, they allowed for, when they sold them to the curer always reckoned that he had about a dozen that weren't fit to put on the stick. You see, the heads were broken when they was pulled out of the nets, and he reckoned that he would only make 120 bloaters out of 132 herrings, so he only gave 120 per 100, 6 sticks at 20 a stick.
Now, back in Joe Bull's day, when he was very fond of a bloater,
yes,
sort of thing,
yeah.
How many herrings were cured, say, in a night, you know, down at Hythe in your place?
Well, in the 1920s, it didn't used to be anything for us to catch anything like 80 or 90,000 herrings per night. And you can reckon there was about 20,000 on some nights in the busy part of the season, which lasted from October till about mid-December. 20,000 herrings a night could be cured in a hive.
So, where have all the herrings gone?
Well, this is the thing. Of course, over the last 5 or 6 years, the channel has been closed for herring fishing, you see.
Well, where'd you get those from, then?
Well, actually, I think that herring come from Boulogne this morning.
You're saying that French fishermen catch these herrings and export them to the UK?
They're exported. We can buy them. We can buy, although the channel is barred, and I believe it's under the common market law, the channel is barred for herring catching from Margate right down through the channel to Land's End. The Frenchmen still fish for herrings, and we can buy them in Billingsgate, packed in polystyrene boxes, 2-stone boxes, and that's how we get our herrings, what we want mostly today.
It sort of suggests that someone's not playing the game.
Well, it is a bit ridiculous, really, isn't it? That's what it amounts to, I expect.
Yeah. John, what are the finest wood chips for curing?
Well, naturally, oak gives the best flavour, but any hardwood, we're fortunate enough to be able to still get quite a bit of hardwood in Kent, and that gives the best flavour, aside from the oak. In many places today, they have to use, in the northern counties, they have to use fir, which gives a colour, but it doesn't give nothing like the same flavour.